Stop. Well, good afternoon, everyone. It is March 4th, 2024. We have a regular assembly meeting today. We'll call the meeting to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mark,
Here.
Jay,
Here.
Rob,
Here.
Scott,
Here.
Donna. Here. Thomas,
Here.
Bob.
Here.
Thank you.
Full assembly in the chambers today. It's now time for the voluntary pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible.
Okay, that brings us to approval of minutes from February 5th, 2024 assembly meeting. I'll entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved. Second.
Motion by member Stanton Gregor, seconded by member Lind. All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye. Aye. Opposed? No opposition. Okay, item 4, amendment and approval of the meeting agenda presented today. Entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of moving forward with the agenda as presented, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Seeing no opposition, we'll move forward. Okay, item 5, public hearings. Today we have 2 public hearings. The first one is on ordinance 2024-01. This is an ordinance amending section 16.12.160, required authorization for disposal of borough real property of the Petersburg Municipal Code to increase the assessed property value requirement for sale or exchange of borough property to be ratified by the voters of the Petersburg Borough. So is there anyone in the audience that would like to participate in this public hearing? And for the new people that just came in, there's the public hearing for ordinance 2024-01. So if anybody would like to speak to that ordinance in the public hearing, now's your chance. Okay, seeing none, that public hearing is closed. Second public hearing on the agenda today is for ordinance 2024-02. This is an ordinance amending section 16.12.030 of the Petersburg Municipal Code to allow for disposal of borough land for a public benefit purpose. Anyone like to participate in that public hearing today? None, that public hearing is also closed. Bid awards, item 6. There are no bid awards today. Brings us to item 7, persons to be heard on items related to today's agenda. Does anybody like to speak to items related to items on the agenda? Mind everybody, there's a 5-minute time limit, so please state your name and who you represent.
Hi, my name is Michelle Fent, and I'm speaking for myself. I want to address the ordinance 2024-03, the ordinance adjusting the budget. In particular, I will speak to the subsection 9, the transfer of $60,000 to the borough's attorney's fees budget to cover extra expenses incurred by the Kerr and Koenig's lawsuits. I must say first that I am no longer a member of the Alaska Bar Association, and as such, I cannot provide you with legal advice. However, I hope that you will listen to me as a citizen of the borough of Petersburg. I would ask that you table subsection 9 until you have full disclosure of all aspects of the 2 claims from the firm currently acting as the attorneys for the borough. The administrative staff are charged with doing their job for the sake of its citizens, not for the sake of the administration itself. It is past time for the administration to do its job and provide Mr. Koenigs with the requested information. They need to provide him with the entire DEMA report and other requested documents, and they need to do it now. All assembly persons should have the judge's January ruling in Mr. Koenig's case. I suspect that you do not have it, so let me tell you what it contains. The judge ruled that none of the privileges claimed by the borough's attorneys regarding the DEMA report were viable, and that this report was not a personnel document as the borough claimed. This is now a public ruling against the borough of Petersburg. If you do not have the ruling in hand, then you should ask yourself why you have not received it. If you were mistakenly not provided with the report, then ask yourself why. Have you received all rulings and filings in this case? Why not? Do you know who these records protect? Have you received the filing from the 23rd of last month in which Mr. Koenig's attorneys outlined how the borough has not been following the judge's order from January? Do you know that your duty is not to protect the administrative staff, any assembly persons, or any one individual? It is to protect the citizens of the borough and our right to hold our government accountable by receiving public records. Remember that you're ultimately responsible for the decisions made. Do you only get partial reports when the administration wants more money to finance the decisions that they have taken out of your hands? If you don't know the ins and outs of why the administration is now asking for more money, then who made that decision in your stead? You have the power to know these things because you control the purse. Refuse to give more of my tax dollars and even Mr. Koenig's tax dollars to violate a judge's ruling without a full accounting of the case from your attorneys. The judge in Mr. Koenig's case will apply the settled case law to every document and not just the Deemer report. The judge in Mr. Koenig's case clearly said in her 32-page ruling that the borough has none of their claimed privileges to rely on anymore. Mr. Koenig's will eventually get every record unless it has only been seen by Ms. Heidemann, Mr. Gisbrick, and Ms. Thompson. Any documents or emails seen or jointly generated by past or present assembly members, other attorneys, or other borough employees are not privileged. That is the bulk of the records Mr. Koenig's has requested. If the only reason for the funds is because the insurance company demands that the borough defend their position, then you need to get the insurance to pay now or to sign an indemnity because you're spending money for their interests and not for the interests of the citizens. You have a judge's ruling now. This ruling will likely result in Mr. Koenig's attorney fees being paid by the borough because the borough did not follow the law and the suit was justified. You need an attorney that either tells you the judge was totally off her rocker, which they won't because she wasn't, or they need to explain to you how you will win at appeal. You need to know what the borough's attorney's recommendation is from their lips or with their signature, telling you that you have any hopes of winning to proceed any further. If you do not have this recommendation for either case, then stop spending money on a losing cause. Any borough citizen has the right to see public documents. I'm assuming my time's close to up. Thank you.
You have a minute left.
Minute?
Yeah.
I read past her. Well, I was just saying, this has been a case of hiding and it's got to stop. The citizens don't want to have it hid anymore. They have the right to see the documents. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for your testimony today. Is there anyone else in the audience or zooming in? It doesn't look like there's many people zooming in, but would like to speak on items related to today's agenda. Please step forward and state your name and who you represent. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item 8, persons to be heard on items not on today's agenda. Is there anyone that would like to speak on items not on today's agenda?
Related but different matter. Again, Michelle Fent, speaking for myself, and same clause applies. I'm not with the bar anymore. I apologize that I have to say that every time. If I had known, I might have done things differently. However, I do hope that you can listen to me. I would like to tell you that I would like to see you as assembly members do in the coming future as it concerns the 2 lawsuits in which the borough is currently embroiled. Seeing this additional request for monies to defend these cases made me wish that each assembly person would ask themselves to which attorneys this amount is going, these funds. Officially, Ms. Heidemann is the borough attorney, and it was her advice that has landed the borough in the 2 cases that it now fights. I want to tell you how I know that the judge in Mr. Koenig's case is not off her rocker, but how I think that Ms. Heidemann is. She advised Ms. Thompson over 3 years ago to not release records based on privileges that the judge in Mr. Koenig's case is now disallowing. This might not seem so egregious until you find out that the impetus for that advice was an email that I sent to Ms. Thompson at that time, which she assured me that she had discussed with Ms. Heidemann, and that was regarding a records request for the exact same materials as Mr. Koenig's request by another citizen. My email outlined to a less impressive degree than the judges exactly what the judge's ruling contained regarding the records sought by Mr. Koenigs. Why was I able to offer that analysis over 3 years ago? Because it was established statutory law and case law that addressed records requests. No attorney who ignores established case law or statutory law is serving the interests of their client. And if they misrepresent the law to their client, that attorney should be fired. The Assembly needs to discontinue any contracts with Ms. Heidemann for either the present or the future. She has failed to offer proper legal representation on behalf of the citizens of Petersburg or to the borough administration. I suspect that if you receive full disclosure of the two cases, you might find that to be true. Additionally, I would like to see the Assembly wade through the doublespeak here. $60,000 to cover extra expenses incurred is doublespeak for help us to fight this case longer until Mr. Koenigs either dies or runs out of money. I want you to know that Mr. Koenigs is not fighting this battle alone. There are others who want to hold the government of the Petersburg Borough to account for their actions. There are citizens who will step in to continue this lawsuit so that the citizens of the borough will not have to fight these battles in the future. Our government is owned by each one of us, and it was formed for the benefit of each one of us. As such, the borough administration needs to be directed to release the records that Mr. Koenigs has asked for over and over, and for which they have no legal privileges to withhold. And for heaven's sake, you need to check into the records that are being requested. Make up your own minds about who the records are protecting. If you don't know that the tale of one party wanting to restrict the release of the information and the other party wanting to release it is a lie by this time, then why don't you know that? You need to get answers to the relevant questions in this case. Then I would wish for you to try and save some of the tax dollars of the citizens of Petersburg by stepping forward and demanding the release of the public records and by starting to negotiate with Chief Kerr about his suit. Until you know what really happened and what the borough might be on the hook for, then you are not doing your job of governing well. Until you know that what he is looking for as a remedy, then you are endangering the borough itself by allowing the administration to make these decisions for you while only the attorneys get rich. You need to make a decision for each of yourselves about what you expect out of these lawsuits. This is not micromanaging, because the decision-making needed for lawsuits is outside of the general duties of administration by the borough staff. The administrative staff are not our elected representatives. That distinctive honor falls to you. Please demand a full accounting of the cases from the attorneys themselves. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your testimony today. Is there anyone else in the audience? I thought I saw more interest on views not on today's agenda.
I am Bob Martin with the Harbor Board. I guess we're not on the agenda. I think I'm in the right spot here. Thanks for that work session on the 15th of this month, last month. You gave us a little bit of boost to have a meeting on the 21st and get the ball rolling on a sort of a framework to allow for the sale of borough tidelands that works for everybody. And I'll just go through the 5 things we talked about. 3 of them, there are 3 pieces to the framework. There's compensation to the Harbor Enterprise Fund, a definition of a marine industrial district, kind of a zoning overlay that we could maybe apply to these unnamed properties yet, but a designation that would alleviate some of the concern of what would happen when they're no longer controlled by lease agreements. And that's going to be the stickiest part, some definitions of marine industrial use that everyone can feel comfortable with, so it doesn't become sort of an out of control retail area or some kind of a non-marine use or a seasonal use that we don't want. And the third part of that framework is a process to handle these potential applications in a consistent manner with some findings of fact that pertain to how this is in the borough's interest, if it is. And that way it's not just a case by case, it is a case by case basis, but it's got certain questions that we could ask and determine whether we should further entertain a sale. And so we're working on those. We don't have anything to present to you yet. I think some of the zoning language might be going before an attorney or something before we see that again. And then the fourth item on our agenda was the Island Refrigeration application to purchase the borough property. And we decided to just postpone that because we want to get this framework ironed out first. It was in no way a reflection on our that we weren't supportive of this application. And then the fifth item was the Fierce Allegiance Ocean Beauty Seafoods lease assignment. We recommended in favor of granting them that assignment, but it's very conditional on that use being as specified in the 1994 lease document, where it is for loading fish. And it's okay to use that for parking, but it's substantially for loading fish, not just vehicle parking. If it's going to be vehicle parking, there's a lot of competing demands for parking in that area. So we'd ask you that if you do approve that, it needs to be revisited as leases are and to see if it complies with that use. And thank you. And I do have another note. The Fish and Game Advisory Committee is going to have a meeting in this room here, March 20th, 6:30 p.m. to discuss the blind slough king salmon sport fishing restrictions. Just a way to get that notice out there. There should be department people, maybe some Sarah people to get answers straight from the horse's mouth. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony today. Anyone else in the audience that would like to speak on items not on today's agenda? Yep, step forward, state your name and who you represent. And there is a 5-minute time limit, but
Brock Snyder, got Island Refrigeration. I applied for that piece of land off of Dock Street. And I just wanted to tell you guys that I'm grateful for the care that you're putting into all of this. And I don't want to hinder the overall scheme at all. But I felt like I went to the work session and that was just good to see everybody trying to come up with the best solution there. And then I went to the harbor board meeting and once again, just seeing everybody trying to do what is overall best. And I just wanted to just say that the overlay that's going to be put over, like when I put my application in, it was kind of like in the middle of this whole process. And I just wanted to say that whatever overlay gets put on that area for marine industrial use, that I'm for that. I wouldn't be opposed to that. So like if my application, I don't know when exactly it's going to come up, but I just wanted everybody to know that I am for that overlay and not opposed to it in any way. So if like it came into effect after I was able to purchase it, it sounded like Liz said that I didn't really have a choice in that anyway. So I just wanted to make that clear and that I am grateful for the efforts you guys are making to help us succeed and trying to help the fleet succeed. And so I just wanted to let you know that I'm positive towards that overlay. That's about all I can say. Thank you.
thank you for your testimony today. Anyone else in the room that would like to speak to items that are not on today's agenda? Forward, item 9, boards, commission and committee reports. There are none on the agenda today. Consent agenda, there are 2 items and we'll handle them separately. The item A, Reno/Schoenberg lease renewal. The lease of Thailand parcel T-25 ATS9 is up for renewal effective March 1st, 2024 at an annual rate of $1,164. I'd entertain a motion to approve that lease renewal.
So move.
Second. Motion made by member Lynn, seconded by member Stanton Gregor. Any discussion? Member Lynn?
I have a question. What's the length of this lease? Is it 50 years again? Does anybody know?
Are these all 50-year leases with 5-year renewals?
Been amended, through the mayor, I'm sorry. The original lease was in 1989, and it's been amended, 7 times for just the various things. And I'm trying to figure out. Original lease was dated February 1st, 1984, and I don't have a date on it, I'm sorry. We can get back to you on that.
Any other discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Rob,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes. I think we did a flip flop.
I did it backwards, sorry. Jay,
Yes.
Scott.
Yeah.
Thomas,
Yes.
Donna.
Okay, the lease renewal is approved. Item B, Petersburg Port Dock Corner Dolphin Engineering Services Proposal. In the fiscal year 2024 budget, the Assembly approved use of $100,000 of the Marine Passenger Fee and Commercial Passenger Vessel Fund for design of a passenger tour ship mooring dolphin at the port dock. P&D Engineers Incorporated has provided a proposal for engineering services for this project for a cost not to exceed $100,000. I'd entertain a motion to approve this proposal.
So move.
Second.
Motion been made by member Marsh, seconded by member Newman. Any discussion? Marsh?
Thank you. So this is not new money that we're allocating or requesting, but this was previously approved. Is that where we are on this?
That's the way I understand it.
Okay.
And I'd have a question for the harbor master. So Glow, is this the dolphin that's south of the Petro Dock to extend the tie-up ability?
Yeah, this is the engineering portion of it. So we need to get it engineered and get it, all spec'd out on what the costs and those kind of things would be. So we don't expect to use 100,000, but we wanted it up to that. The last time we had this, run by PND, it was about a year ago. So we wanted to not waste anybody's time and get your approval before we move forward.
Okay, now this is something we've been talking about for
Yeah.
quite some time. Any other discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Jay,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Donna,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Scott.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, that passes unanimously as well. Item 11, report of other officers. Petersburg Medical Center update. PMC CEO Hofstetter is unavailable to attend in person due to travel, but has provided a written update on activities at the medical center. And I see we have Mr. Kuhn and Mr. Roundtree zooming in. So is there any questions of the report? So I have, someone asked me recently about the recent visit to Juneau, where a few members of the hospital board and, member Lynn and CEO Hofstetter visited with Senator Stedman and, talked about potential funding from the state. And, they asked what was the outcome of that meeting. And from my discussion with our lobbyist was that Senator Stedman said he didn't think there would be any state money. So I'm just kind of curious how we're gonna move forward from here. We had the work session with the hospital board and I asked this question and it talked about, other funding opportunities and one of them was USDA. So I know we're still moving forward with the work building, but I'm just kind of curious what what's coming next after that. So if anybody has any updates. Member Lynn.
Yeah, I don't want to speak for Mr. Hostetter, but I do know that he's pursuing at least 2 other avenues of funding. And it's, it's number one priority for the hospital board and it's number one priority for him. And I also know that he's been looking at, also looking at other types of loans, particularly USDA side that, but he doesn't want to use that unless we can't find other options. But looking at, and again, I don't want to speak for him, but looking at options, I think that with the changes in Medicare revenues that would come in based on a new building and the offset with what we can get out. In other words, what it does is that you can depreciate that over another 30, 40 years, and the depreciation almost pays for whatever the annual loan rate would be. Pretty close, but there has to be a lot more work done on that. And so it's definitely not sitting around. It's, he's moving on with it.
Okay, I figured I'd try to get an answer for the people that asked me that. So is there any other questions on the medical center's update? Move on to item B, U.S. Forest Service update. District Ranger Bourne will provide an update on the Forest Service activities.
Good afternoon, Mayor Jensen and Assembly members. Thanks for letting me speak for a few minutes today. Again, I'm Ray Bourne. I serve as a district ranger here at Petersburg Ranger District for the Forest Service. First thing I want to talk about is the forest plan update. You should have a letter that I put in front of you. That's the invitation to what's going on. You should all have a copy of this. This is sent out. This is dated February 12th. This is the start of the discussion of reaching out for community involvement in it. As we talk about that, we want to invite you to attend a community workshop that we're planning for a community on April 23rd. And that's from 4 to 7 p.m. here at the Borough Chambers. That's an opportunity for the community and everybody in the community come and talk to us about what they see we need to do going forward with the forest plan revisionist process. There are information webinars starting this week actually, and you should have also a brochure that looks kind of like this. It's got a little QR code on it that you can tune into the webinars and find out what's going on with it. These are informational webinars. First one is, what is the forest plan revision? And that'll be this week. And there'll be one every week and for the month of March on Wednesday evenings, for people to tune in and understand what's going on. But it also gives you a link to provide feedback, provide information, and keep up with what's going on a regular basis as we move forward with the process. So there's a lot going on. The process is going to take 3 to 4 years. So 2027 is the target to be done with this. So this year is the information gathering year. So we're reaching out to communities, to tribes, to tribal corporations to gather information. We're doing community workshops here in Petersburg as well as in Cake, at least for Petersburg Ranger District. So other communities throughout the Southeast. Okay, talk about timber real quickly. Thomas Bay. I signed a decision notice 2 weeks ago. We're going to move forward now with marking that particular unit. The prescription we came up with is different than what we started with. So we need to go back in, mark it. Our wildlife biologist wants to take another look at it. It's been a few years since he's been in there just to reassess that. Our intent is to have that marked and laid out this year and offered for sale by this fall some time frame. So that'll be available. And that's basically on about 561 acres and about 12.6 million board feet. Those are kind of where we're at right now with that process. So something coming up again in that arena. We still have small sales going alongside the road. You'll see it periodically. We're selling, from 10 to 50 trees, give or take, individually selected by people looking out there, and we go out and verify those numbers and then mark them for sales. They're kind of ongoing, and we're starting to see a little more activity with the roads clearing up. So we'll see more and more people out there doing that as well. And of course, free use permits are always available. So you can definitely come in and talk with my timber crew to get a free use permit. 12-mile decks, we haven't talked about that a lot. That is the sale on Cake Access Road. We sold that timber, last December. Peak Engineering won the bid on that, and they will be starting to collect and harvest that stuff this spring. So it should be done probably by early summer. Should be pretty straightforward. They pick up the logs, they get to transport them, they're gonna barge them out of there. We do have one challenge that we're going to have to do a little consultation with NOAA because they're barging them across the water for NOAA's concern for endangered species, but we're moving forward with that. So I think everything's going well on the timber side. Talk about cabins and trails. BIL cabins, bipartisan infrastructure law. So we partner with National Forest Foundation to construct approximately 25 new cabins throughout the Southeast and throughout Alaska. 10 cabins across the region and here in the Tongass, and that we'll do that. So the first help is Church Bite Cabin Repairs. It's on Admiralty Island, which is relatively close to us. So they reached out, they said, we want to let people know about that. And kind of what they're doing up there, they're going to replace and refurbish furnishings and the counters. It'll all be interior. They're going to transport by landing craft and by airplane. So that's just an update on what's going on up there as well. We're also doing a West Point cabin repair this year. We got moved up on the priority list to happen this year. And that's going to be replace old rusting fabricated brackets of the cabin's foundation and porch, but new components will improve that stability and kind of upgrade that cabin a little bit. It's our most used cabin on the district, so we're definitely going to do some improvements on that. From our aquatic side, on QU, we're doing the second phase of a heavy equipment restoration project out there, which is basically a stream restoration project. And we'll be working out there all summer long. And the in-stream work will be June 15th, to early July. And then there'll be some outside the stream work that go into September timeframe. So lots of work going on out there as well. SRS RAC, I just came off a call today, some news on that. We still need 3 more applicants on that, so we're looking for more people for that particular process. SRS RAC, Secure Rare Schools Act has about $3 million available for the south half of the Tongass. So something we want to kind of definitely have to get these members in place. It takes 15 members. We need 3 more to get on there to get those. So we're looking for applicants for that particular RAC process. Again, so FACA process has to be approved by Washington. It becomes kind of a challenging process. We thought we had their numbers. They came back, so well, some of these people are excluded because they were prior members on this RAC. So that's my update. Any questions for me?
Any questions of Mr. Bourne?
Okay, thank you very much for your.
Excuse me, seeing none. Thank you for your report. Or do you have anything, Bob? And excuse me for this cough I've got here. Item C. Petersburg School District Activities Director Cabral is supposed to share information regarding the possible future of a turf and track field, but I don't see him today, so we'll go on to the mayor's report. And this is from Southeast Conference on February 6th. The Senate panel with Stedman, Giesel, Keel, and Stevens. What I took out of this panel was 3 issues for funding that they're going to try to do this year: energy, education, and try to redo the retirement. And also they're going to deal with the governor's executive orders, and some of them they don't like. Number 1 funding issue this year is for energy, and they're talking about an intertie from Kenai to Fairbanks, and that's going to be a $412 million project, and half of it state, half of it federal. And in some discussions with our local representatives for Southeast, they're hoping that there's a possibility, since they're funding energy issues, maybe, you know, SEPA can possibly get some more money if they move forward with the 3rd turbine at Tyee. So keep our fingers crossed. Talking about the Alaska Marine Highway System, the main drawback now is finding workforce. They could have had 2 mainline ferries running, but they didn't have, you know, the workers. In fact, the Hubbard going up Lynn Canal was actually canceled once or twice last summer because of the crew shortage. As far as ferry replacement, it's looking like 4 years out. And for the first ferry, the Tustamina is going to be the new ferry for Cross Gulf. The Taslina, they're adding crew quarters to that in 2024. Columbia needs upgrades to its controllable pitch propellers, and that's in 2025. Kennecott needs some emissions upgrades to meet EPA standards, and the Matanuska is still undergoing assessment of its hull, whether the steel is good enough to keep using that vessel. So talked about the fishing industry. I went to the fisheries panel. That's why I couldn't attend the meeting with Senator Stedman with the hospital group. It doesn't look really good, as we all know. According to Tracy Welch, the CEO of United Fishermen of Alaska, there's 17 plants that are going to be of various sizes that will be not operating this year in Alaska. And we all are aware of the situation with Trident. That's a local plant. So hopefully, you know, they could get some movement on that. Well, Tola gave a little address, and she said the feds have given 400 million to the state for Alaska Marine Highway System. So it's not like it's a lack of money that the system has. It's just, you know, trying to get some new ships online. And they're also planning on doing a lot of upgrades to many of the facilities shoreside. And one of them is Prince Rupert, and that's a $37 million project for the new dock there. But they see that as a very important link to getting the lower 48. Not a lot of other things to talk about. The inter-island ferry is running well between Ketchikan and Kaufman Cove. It's has some funding issues, but the state generally helps them out there. They had 700 sailings last year and moved 46,000 people. That's quite a few on a little boat back and forth across Clarence Straits. And that ridership has been growing steadily. Then there was a transportation symposium. Basically covered the same things, crew shortage, Hubbard Upland Canal, Columbia for 15 months for the propeller job. Matthews got to be determined on this condition, and standardizing terminals so all the boats can use them, which would, I'm surprised I didn't think of that earlier. So that's pretty much it for the Southeast Conference. And then there was a AML, which a few of us attended, member Lynn, member Walsh, and the manager and I. So if you guys think of anything that I don't cover, I'm not going to cover too much, but Senator Sullivan's address was, he was talking about trying to help the fishing fleet out by trying to get the Department of Agriculture to see why the fishermen can't be, treated more like farmers. You know, farmers get all the crop insurance and subsidies, and I think that's been a discussion they've been working on for a while. At Alaska Municipal League, I talked with Robert Venables from Southeast Conference. He offered whatever help that organization could do to help with the condition of the fisheries. I ended up attending a Lincoln Day dinner while at AML. The governor was there, Senator Sullivan, invited them and a few other senators to Mayfest this year, but we'll see if any of them show. There's quite a few elected officials there from around the state, and we got introduced to the crowd, which was kind of surprising. But anyway, do you guys have anything to add?
Through the mayor, I've got some things in my report. But
Okay. Oh, you just do it next. Okay. So if is there any questions from assembly members? So one other thing we talked about, the conference of mayors, this discussion happens every year. I haven't attended a conference of mayor meeting, but they keep asking, is it a viable group? And it is, if you have, some topics that you want to bring forward to the legislature or the governor and his staff. And there was nothing glaring this time that we took any action on. So still talking about quarterly meetings, but we're scattered all over the state and have different work schedules, so it's kind of hard to do. So that's it for my report. Now it's time for the manager's report.
Yes, sir. Parks and Rec will be hosting more swim and gym time during spring break. Check online or swing by for a flyer for your fridge. Borough employee Christine Lynn won the annual Chamber of Commerce Young Person of the Year for her work as a volunteer at the fire department in EMS and youth sports in the community. Congratulations to Christine. During the recent warm weather spell, the Public Works crew constructed a pole barn to store bridge repair materials and other supplies that need to be kept under cover. Most of the materials for this structure were surplus that we had on hand. We are working some unbudgeted overtime at the moment in motor pool to keep the plow equipment running, and address the routine needs of the department. Still no applicants for the open motor pool mechanic position. All departments are currently working on next year's budget and monitoring their current year's activities, and we'll see more information on that as we get into later in March. Director Cotta will be on vacation from March 8th through the 18th. Sanitation Department Supervisor Aaron Morrell will be acting Public Works Director during this time. Arctic Fire and Security will arrive March 11th and start installing the new locking system at the PD. Install should be completed on or before March 22nd. Finance Director and her staff are currently reviewing and editing the sales tax code for more transparency and clarification. Edits will be going before the Assembly at a future meeting. Assessment notices went out in the mail on March 1st. Property owners have 1 month to appeal their assessment. And the library's annual inventory closure is scheduled for Monday, March 4th through the 7th. Harbor staff has been working, as you saw, with Alan Murph on a few conceptual designs and cost estimates for future harbor projects. So we have stuff shovel ready if money becomes available. And the harbor is working on the tour ship schedule. It's a bit higher with 118 currently on the schedule, although that can change throughout the year. Harbor Board has met and worked through the Borough Harbor lease considerations, as you heard, and they have been forward to admin to start working on actual formal ordinance. South Harbor Dredge Project made some national news for the positive use of infrastructure monies that allowed the Corps to dredge the harbor for the first time in 42 years and accept future responsibility for the dredging work. So great job by the harbor staff as well as all the folks in the Corps that helped make this possible for us. Derek is working with Jackie from the hospital about Medicaid. They've changed some of their systems and we have about 3 years of Medicaid information that has to be manually put into their system so that it is able for when they do their Medicaid audits. COVID kind of hit the assisted living facility over the last couple of weeks. We had 7 residents with COVID. Everybody is doing better. We are in the process of evaluating the rate structure at assisted living. It's likely rates will increase for next year's budget, and this includes for food, where we've seen dramatic increases in costs. Rain Country, paperwork has been submitted and approved for the annual operating cost adjustment factors, or OCAF, which is a rent adjustment for Petersburg elderly housing. This is a HUD process that we have to go through every year. Rain Country contractors completed the annual boiler maintenance where Brian discovered and repaired an issue with a fuel line, improving the efficiency and effectiveness of the system at elderly housing. Ongoing firefighter course at the fire hall started March 2nd. If an individual is interested, now is a great time to join. Classes will run on Saturdays until completed. Borough is also hosting a wilderness first aid course for the public. We partnered with PMC to do this. The course is March 24th from 8 to 6. Contact the volunteer fire department or PMC Wellness Office for details. I met with Tribal President Deborah O'Gara and Vice Chair Nathan Lopez, discuss the possibility of moving forward on the 8th Street housing project. PIA is looking at the project and will let me know. I also spoke with Jackie Peda from Clingett and Haida Housing this past week. They are working with PIA on the possibility of moving forward with the housing project in Petersburg. So they're also very much involved in this conversation. And mentioned Assembly members Lynn and Fine Walsh, along with Mayor Jensen and myself. We met with ADOT, so Department of Transportation, South Coast Regional Director Christopher Goins, to discuss future projects that could benefit Petersburg. The group also met with Senator Stedman and Representative Himshoot to discuss various issues related to school funding, hospital, deferred maintenance, and other future capital needs. As the mayor pointed out, there's not likely to be a very large, if any, capital budget for this year in the state. And that's it, unless there's questions.
Questions of the manager on his report? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Steve. We'll move on to item 14, unfinished business. Ordinance 2024-01, an ordinance amending section 16.10.160, required authorization for disposal of borough real property of the Petersburg Municipal Code to increase the assessed property value requirement for sale or exchange of borough property to be ratified by the voters of the Petersburg Borough. This is the second reading. If adopted in three readings, this ordinance would increase the assessed property value requirement for sale or exchange of borough land to be ratified by borough voters from $500,000 to $2 million. The last time the requirement was amended was in 1990, when it was increased from $100,000 to $500,000 where it is currently. The Assembly approved this ordinance by a 4-to-1 vote in its first reading. I'd entertain a motion to adopt this ordinance in its second reading.
So move.
Is there a second? Motion was made by Member Marsh, seconded by Member Fine Walsh, I believe. Discussion? Member Marsh.
Yes, so I do struggle with that $2 million cap. And I understand I visited with Liz last week. And it seemed that that was an aggregate, let's say somebody had a project that the multiple parcels or one or more parcels would equal that $2 million cap. And that would not need to go before the voters. Because the Assembly represents the citizens of the community as well as the land itself essentially belongs to the citizens of the community. I think that $2 million is a bit high, and it would seem that it would be prudent to have the citizens weigh in on if that approval should be granted. So I'd like to see it drop down to, let's say 1.5 million rather than the 2 million. I don't know if there's interest in the Assembly for that. Because like I say, this land belongs to the people of Petersburg.
So is that in a form of a motion, Member Marsh?
That would be a great idea. Thank you.
Okay, motion's been made by Member Marsh to reduce the amount allowed for, the land sales by the Assembly from $2 million to $1.5 million. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Member Schwartz. Discussion. You know, I kind of agree with, this motion, this amendment. It went from $200,000 or $100,000 to $500,000, but that was like 30 years ago. To triple it, you know, it seems like, you know, $1.5 million is quite a bit of, money. A lot of land could be purchased with that, so. And I agree with Member Marsh, we represent the people in the community. Well, that's my input on the amendment. Any other input?
Well, I think one of the things we discussed last time was waiting for October to get a vote of the people. But 1.5, you know, people have talked to me about this. And you want to be a good representative. And 1.5 seems reasonable to me.
Any other input? So we'll vote on this amendment to lower the cap from $2 million to $1.5 million. Clerk, call the roll.
Scott,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes,
Mark,
Yes.
Rob,
Yep.
Thomas,
Yes.
Donna,
Yes,
Jay?
Nope.
thank
Okay,
you.
the amendment on the main motion to reduce the cap from $2 million to $1.5 million passes with a 6-to-1 vote with Member Stanton Gregor opposed. And that brings us back to the main motion as amended. Member Lynn?
yeah, but after I read this, I think there needs to be another amendment, which I'm planning to work on next couple of weeks, but when we put that before the voters, I think there has a responsibility to put in there a number of things about the value, why we're doing it, and what benefit it has to the borough and benefit to the citizens. And so I think there needs to be an amendment, some kind of a change in this to be able to require that when it's put before the voters. But anyway, I intend to have an amendment to this on the next reading. Thank you.
Just to clarify this for me, if we pass this in the 3 readings, that means we don't have to go to the vote of the public if it's not over $1.5 million?
Yes, sir. That's correct. This ordinance does not require the assembly to go to the voters. So if that's what you're intending, you have a different direction you'll need to go in.
So if we pass this ordinance, we have the authority to sell land up to whatever dollar value we end up
Yes, sir.
coming with. Okay.
Yes, sir.
I thought that was the case. I just thought it'd be good to speak that publicly. Okay, so we have an amended motion on the floor to move the cap from $500,000 to $1.5 million for the sale of property. Any discussion on that? Clerk, call the roll.
Scott,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Rob,
Yep.
Thomas,
Yes.
Donna,
Yes,
Jay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, ordinance 2024-01 passes in its second reading as amended. Next item, ordinance 2024-02, an ordinance amending section 16.12.030 of the Petersburg Municipal Code to allow for disposal of borough land for a public benefit purpose. This is the second reading. If adopted in 3 readings, this ordinance will provide for disposal of borough real property for less than assessed or appraised value, or for other forms of consideration in addition to or in lieu of, in whole or in part, direct monetary payment to the borough when the proposed disposal is for a project meeting both of the following requirements. 1, the project consists of economic development consisting of installation, construction, or operation of new or expanded industrial, manufacturing, or commercial facilities, construction of affordable housing, or construction of large residential housing developments, creating 20 or more residential lots that would address the shortage of reasonably priced housing within the borough. And 2, the assembly determines the project will result in a significant short or long-term public benefit to the Petersburg Borough. Public benefit as used hereunder means a project that provides one or more positive economic or non-economic impacts on the community that in the assembly's determination outweigh maximizing the direct monetary payment to the borough. This ordinance was approved by a 4-to-1 vote in its first reading. I'd entertain a motion to adopt ordinance 2024-02 in its second reading.
So moved.
second.
Motion been made with the second discussion. Member Stan Gregor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Couple of different pieces. I'll start with a clarifying question for the manager, if I could, Steve. You know, the ordinance says right now, for less than assessed or appraised value, which means during these 3 readings would be up to us to decide which that will be for the future.
Through the mayor, yes.
Okay.
That needs to be clarified.
Thought so, just a point of clarification for those listening. And a secondary follow-up procedure question, would that be done through an amendment, Clerk Regula? Or how would we go? What's
You
the
want to-
procedural way to do that?
Yes.
Fine Walsh.
Before we go down the amendment path here, I believe that language was intentional. Real property for less than assessed or appraised, the intention being that that would give the assembly the ability to go below the lower of those 2 numbers, whether appraised or assessed. I mean, in most cases, assessed is going to be lower, but the goal is to take the lowest of those numbers and allow the assembly, should it decide to dispose of property for less than that number. So I believe in this case, if you look in the areas where the language assessed or appraised is used, that is intentional to include both of those numbers, so you avoid a situation where if one number is lower than the other, it would prevent the assembly from kind of accomplishing the goal of the ordinance. Something to consider, I guess, before making an amendment. I mean, and perhaps if you discuss this with the attorney and feel pretty confident about it, I'd be willing to go with it. I just want to, pretty sure based on my conversations with Director Cabrera that language was intentional. But I'm welcome to correct me if I'm wrong.
Member Newman?
Wait,
Okay, go ahead, Member Stan.
are you going to follow up on that, Manager Giesbrecht?
I'm just gonna say, just so everybody's on the same page. To get an appraisal, we have to pay extra for that. There's a cost, and a time issue. So if that's the direction that someone wants to go, or it's either or, on every one of these kind of projects, we'd have to get an appraisal done. So that adds cost to the process. I mean, that's just a observation for you.
Has it not been the procedure for the person wanting to buy the property to pay for the appraisal? So it wouldn't encumber wouldn't,
But it takes time.
right,
I mean,
okay. Member Stan Gregor, any more follow-up on your part? No, Member Newman?
I'll hop back in later.
Okay, so I'm trying to grasp a visualization of how this would actually lay out. I mean, the intent is to create affordable housing or lots. But the only issue that I see is essentially we're taking public property and we're transferring it into a private entity. And so by reading this, I don't see any mechanism for ensuring that after this all happens and the construction of the roads or lots and the utilities happen, that the intent is that the value or by going below assessed value, the cheapest possible way, that will be passed on to the end user, which is the person who buys the property, and not to the real estate developer. So, but thereby giving public property and increasing the developer's, bank account, I guess, so to speak. So is there any way that we can ensure, whether through contract or maybe an amendment, to ensure that the value goes to the end user to create affordable housing rather than increasing the profit margin for the developer?
Fine, Wolf.
Some points in response to that. I appreciate that. And this is an issue. I mean, it's kind of the key issue. It's the one I've grappled with here. Director Cabrera spent a lot of time agonizing over that issue. And I believe the answer to your question is in section F of the amended ordinance here. Section F is really important. Section F, basically, that encapsulates the last phase of this process, wherein the assembly will attach specific conditions to the disposal of the land. Those conditions are the ones I believe Member Newman is referring to, conditions such as profit capping on the part of the developer, for instance, or conditions relating to limitations on who the land can be sold to avoid speculation. All those kind of things are contemplated in section F. The last part of the process being the formation and execution of a purchase or sale agreement to whatever developer for whatever piece of land for whatever purpose. That document would contain the covenants that you're referring to, and that's a very important part of the process. I don't want anyone to think that that part is being underappreciated or undervalued. Section F is very important. It's not particularly verbose, but it is very important. And the reason it is worded the way it is that this amended ordinance contemplates a variety of different economic projects, not always just housing. And section F kind of opens up the ability for the assembly to cater each sale agreement to the project itself to ensure. And again, this all ties back into other sections of the ordinance too that bind the assembly and every other public body that touches this to show that they are acting in the public interest for the public benefit, that there is a public benefit that outweighs the economic benefit. So that there will need to be written findings of fact, a clear trail of convincing evidence leading up to the execution of that sale agreement. So I hope that answers some of your questions.
That's very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I actually have a boatload of problems with this situation here. For starters, the existing ordinance that we have now is less than 10 lines long. We're looking at a page and a half of rules, which in essence, for the honest person, it's going to be incredibly difficult to meet them all. For the dishonest person, there's so much legalese in here that it's going to be easy to skate through. And then when we get to paragraph F and we start looking about the conditions of the disposal and what's going to be required that may be insured or delineated, we need some concrete language. So it's going to make outlaws out of honest people. It's going to, if it's loosely configured, it's going to make outlaws able to do more of what they want. And I'm not making any accusations anywhere, but I'm just saying it's kind of absurd what we're looking at. For one, oh, sorry. We've got two requirements that they have to meet. One is in the first item, construction of affordable housing. Whose definition? The feds have a definition of what affordable housing is, but are we adopting that same one? We need to figure out something there. Reasonably priced housing within the borough. Again, what kind of definition are we looking at? If we were to go to the grocery store and look at the price of eggs or milk or whatever it is it reasonable? Depends on your opinion and your position, but we pay the high prices for groceries because we need them. Housing, we need housing. So I think sometimes we need to start thinking outside of the box. Someone I spoke with said, what about container housing? You know, you might be able to get a nice insulated container home installed in some place in town that would be very reasonably priced. I don't know if I want amendments or all these, but under section C, item 1, we talk about a conceptual plan. How loosely configured is that conceptual plan? Is it something that's sketched on the back of an envelope? Or is it, you know, plans, dimensions, cost estimates, as well as a developmental timeline? I also have problems with the borough manager on number 2 under section C. May also refer to proposed disposal for review and comment to other applicable boards and commissions. To me, it's not concrete enough, but yet it's so complicated, it's going to hit every target. And then, to me, this favors big business. If we wanted to create affordable housing, why not, if we're going to cut deals for big business who can put up 20 or more different housing lots, you know, most of us have kids in here who might take advantage of a land deal to establish and, you know, buy their piece of property at a deal from the borough and create their own home. I think we're missing the mark here in a big way. So like I say, I don't know if we want to start making amendments or what the will of the assembly is, but this to me is a very illogical proposal.
Any other input? Member Lynn?
Yeah, I've been through this in some detail, and when one of the items I looked at is I cross-referenced this proposed ordinance with the previous one, and I think there's inconsistencies there between the two. Because the other one we set, anything above 1.5 million has to go to the voters, anything below there we can make decisions on. Does that apply also to this one? And I don't know the answer to my question. I don't expect one right now, but I have questions here. And then I look at in those, when you cross-reference those, there's some differences in approaches on the two of them. First question. Second one I have is that we talk in there under item B about, we've set the number of lots at 20. If it's anything under 20, then we can do a different process. Over 20, we can just, but then is that consistent? Because we also talk in there about industrial, commercial, and manufacturing, and we set no limits on the amount of land or the value. Or should that, you know, or should the 20 be taken out and just talk about a subdivision? A question I don't have an answer for right now. I think that under item C of that, an applicant needs to show that they have the financial means to be able to do what's proposed here. And that's not in the ordinance right now at all, as I see it. I also think that under, we say PEDC shall review. I think that ought to be, go back to something that Member Marsh said, is that I think it ought to be to the discretion of who needs to review based on the application myself. And then we're talking about fair market value. I think that any proponent should have to pay total cost for any appraisal. It should not be on the borough's cost. And then last, on public hearings, that one, I think on any proposal like this, there should be a public hearing. That public hearing, before that public hearing's done, that should include all the information available to the public so that you can have a reasonable discussion about that proposal. And some of those changes, I think those amendments need to be made for me to go along with it. Thank you.
Dan Gregor.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'll get a couple things on the table first with it. First, I will be voting for this today in its second reading. Because I know we're having a second public hearing for this, the third reading. Because I'm not sure I'll support it in its third reading as it stands right now, but I think the public deserves to get another public hearing for that and see the process through. So that being said, I echo several of the concerns some of the members have brought up. The overall theme that I struggle with is some of the subjective terms, affordable. I think even with an attempt at rigorous definition, public benefits is, that could depend on the views of an assembly, as Member Marsh said. Does somebody find eggs reasonably priced? Some will, some won't. It gives me pause that it could have the law of unintended consequences. I think I could make a pretty good argument that it's a public benefit for the borough to sell me a piece of property at 60% of appraised value, because then I'd have more, property taxes on the rolls. But I don't think that's really what we're going for. I think it could open up a large can of worms that defeats the purpose of what we're going for here. I'm not going to do an amendment on the appraised value piece right now, but I think I probably will in the third reading. I like the linear simplicity of, if you want to buy this piece of property, you pay for an appraisal and we'll go from there. I think it's the sound business move, but I'll hold off on that one until the third reading. Just want to make sure it was said. I think I'll let it sit for there, but I will be voting for it today to get it to the third reading and go from there. Thanks.
Just a clarification on something that, Member Stan Gregor talked about. So we have to have a second public hearing, or is that just something we decided to do with this?
Yes, sir. It was decided at the last meeting
Okay.
to have an extra public hearing on this.
Perfect.
Yes, sir.
Perfect. Public input is important. I agree. So, so this, I wasn't here for the last reading. This ordinance change basically came from people wanting to develop affordable housing, correct? One of them, does this have anything to do with, the Skylark one, or is it all 8th Street, or is it both? So, Member Fine Walsh, you were involved in drafting most of these changes to this ordinance?
I was, yes. Yeah, can I speak to that? And I think I can address some of the questions that have come up. I realize this is a lot of text and it's replacing what was originally a pretty brief ordinance. And I guess I'm confused. A lot of people seem, there seems to be some consternation, some concern about, the ability to dispose of property. But I would say that currently we have the same ability, just with no rules. There's no guidelines, there's no roadmap. So I don't understand how this is making us more nervous. I believe, the goal here was to take what is currently kind of a frighteningly private and unregulated process and make it public, put it in front of people. Member Lynn mentioned that there are no public hearings, and there are. This ordinance specifically contemplates a number of public hearings by the Planning and Zoning Commission, and also by the Assembly, before any disposal is made. The whole, kind of impetus behind this was to create a public process for these disposals because of the obviously the difficulty of disposing of land for under-assessed value is a public good. And we're choosing to determine as a community how we want to use that public good. It needs to be a very public process. And this, so this ordinance, it was not motivated by any one development project. This is more than anything, this is motivated by the fact that I look around and I don't see attainable housing anywhere in town. There is some affordable housing. And I don't regret there's been some confusion about the difference between affordable housing. That is a technical term that refers to housing that is available on an income testing basis, which I know there's a time and place for that. I think it's a great thing, but I don't want that to be the only way we can get cheaper housing to people, because it puts up a lot of barriers to what I like to call attainable housing, reasonably priced housing, if you will. And we're trying to fill that gap. How do we get property out there that's not, income tested, but isn't, some $700,000, mansion on Sandy Beach? How do we build these smaller, modest properties? I see people trying to do that at PIA with the 8th Street project. I see our local developers, Rock and Road, trying to do that with their Skylark development. And I look, what can local government do? What can we do to encourage the development of housing, without running the risk of, giving a developer a windfall profit or letting an unscrupulous individual run away with land. And I mean, I think people need to be more comfortable with the democratic process here. If some fool comes up to us and says, hey, I want to buy one lot for myself for no reason, and fails to give a convincing reason for why that would be a public benefit, I don't understand how elected assembly members are going to be able, every one of them is going to be able to buy that and then write down their justifications in a way that's going to convince our manager, our attorney, the rest of the community. I mean, we would be held to account. That would not happen. So, I want to kind of nip that in the bud. I think the idea of this is that this is the responsibility of these elected bodies to make these decisions. We should not be shying away from the decisions just because we're not being told exactly what to do by some statute. I mean, occasionally you do need to just vote and decide. At least with this, proposal, we're doing it publicly. We're running things by the appropriate boards, and I believe that's also contemplated. The manager has the ability to determine on his behalf, which boards are going to be appropriate to review various proposals. But in every case, it's going to go through planning and zoning and the assembly. And I think most cases PEDC, especially if you're talking about a, economic public benefit process. So I would encourage people, to consider this, reach out to the borough attorney if you have any questions about the language, about specific terms. Reach out to Director Cabrera. I would be happy to answer any questions myself. And again, I welcome amendments. I believe the process for paying for appraisals is already in our code, but if that were to be, that I don't see any reason why that couldn't be put in. But yeah, I think I kind of hit some of the questions and concerns people had. And I would encourage people to support this. There's a lot of demand for housing, and it's very difficult. And I believe our assessed property values are increasing for reasons that I don't think are really reflected in our local economy. I struggle with the fact that I think we're kind of hamstringing our own local development by sticking to these assessed values. So I think, it seems like kind of the adult thing to do, give yourself, your elected bodies the right to make decisions, and be held accountable for those decisions. I think that's a perfectly reasonable way to approach this.
Okay, and I will definitely be digging into this a little bit more in depth before the third reading, but I will support it today. It seems awful complicated, and I'm going to throw one more thing out there. That every assembly member has their own decision-making process, and their decision they make, the vote they take is theirs, and it can't be questioned. Member Newman.
Yeah, I'm in support of this. You know, I do believe and agree with Tom, some of the member Pine Walsh, that there needs to be a mechanism. You know, we have the land. We have a construction company that is, you know, wants to take advantage of, you know, this ordinance. And, you know, I've been approached by a couple of local people and they're like, well, why don't you sell me a piece of property? Well, the problem is no individual, I shouldn't say no, but most individuals can't afford to build roads to standard. And so here's the benefit here is that, we have a construction company that has the equipment and ability to be able to make this happen. So I think this is a good thing. And like I said, in the first reading, I think it's a really good first step. But yeah, maybe we should read a little bit more. The one other issue that I have is, and I think it can be taken care of in an amendment, is that there's people that own multiple lots in Tlingit and Haida and are just sitting on them and haven't developed them. And I think that we can maybe tighten that up a little bit here because the goal is to get it to individuals that are going to build within a certain amount of time and not for private investors to sit on it and wait for it to accrue value. So I would like to see maybe section F, maybe it says the assembly may impose specific project requirements. Maybe we take out, you know, the time frame for completion of those improvements or the project as a whole and make that a separate one and make it as we shall. I think that's something that we can, we should be able to say right now that we don't want long-term investors. We want people that are going to take advantage of this in the short term.
Marsh.
Thank you. Yeah, I can't, I myself, speaking for myself, cannot afford to build a 300-foot or 600-foot road. But theoretically, I might be able to secure the funding where I could buy a parcel, get the driveway to it. And then Scott decides he wants to live next to us. So he buys the property adjacent to that and punches the road a little bit further and so forth. I think that's how you're going to get development and get roads. I think if we're going to create a mechanism that favors somebody, a developer who can come in and do 20 lots or more, we ought to allow the same favoritism to the private potential property owner who would like to buy borough property for the same thing, to build a home for himself or maybe not for himself. I think that part is irrelevant. I think getting borough property into the hands of private individuals or even developers could be a good thing. One thing I do have, so, you know, paragraph F has been referred to as very important, but again, we have that vagueness of the assembly may impose. I think the bottom line, that should be changed to shall. But the other thing I have is who's going to enforce all this? So you have ABC Development Company come in to say, yeah, I'm going to build 25 new lots. They're going to be, you know, cottage perfect, you know, picket fence, the whole 9 yards, however you want to call it. And yet they don't. Who's going to make up, how's that going to be enforced? Well, planning and zoning, but maybe, you know, your next door neighbor or your uncle or your brother, or your sister or whomever sits on planning and zoning. I think enforcement is going to be a nightmare. So I am absolutely opposed to this. It doesn't make sense logically or ethically or anywhere else. So I am an absolute no at this point.
Okay, any more discussion on the second reading of ordinance 2024-02? And we have one more public hearing in 2 weeks and the third reading. So, 2 weeks between now and then for people to come up to us if they so wish and give us their opinion on this. So if there's no other input, Member Newman.
And just a question, I guess. I know that Member Pine Walsh has been spearheading this and I appreciate all the hard work that entails. So if we wanted to see an amendment or a change in this proposed ordinance, to change the wording regarding uh, you know, a time limitation for development. Is that something that we have to decide on now, or?
Before the third reading, I would assume.
Yeah, I mean, is this something we amend right now, or is this something that Thomas and I can work on later, or how's that
Either
work?
amend it through the mayor. You could either amend it now or at the third and final reading, which I'm gonna do with mine, but anytime we're here, you can do it.
So if anybody wants to propose an amendment to this ordinance as presented to us in the second reading, now is an appropriate time, or we can wait till the third reading. Either way.
I think I'll wait, and then maybe we'll have a further conversation, and then wait for the third reading. That way it's more articulate and not.
So, any other input? We have one more reading and another public hearing, so seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Thomas,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes,
Rob,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Donna,
No.
Okay, the ordinance 2024-02 passes with a 6-1 vote with, member Marsh, voting no. And that's the second reading. That brings us to item 15 on today's agenda. This is new business. Ordinance 2024-03. This is an ordinance adjusting the fiscal year 2024 budget for known changes. And there is a list of items. I believe there's 10. So I didn't entertain a motion to approve this ordinance in its first reading.
So moved.
Oops, sorry.
Motion been made by member Stanton Gregor, seconded by member Marsh. So discussion. For Marsh.
Thank you. I have some questions, concerns. Item number 2, $9,000 for the Property Development Fund for conceptual plan design for parking and traffic flow improvements. I understand that Petersburg Children's Center is looking at a substantial renovation and a much needed expansion, which I wholeheartedly support. However, I am reluctant to allocate any more borough funds, considering the tightness of financial resources. Secondly, we have some travel and training covering new employee hiring and moving expenses. I wonder if there are some caveats that say for some reason these new hires don't work out. Are there conditions worked in that they would reimburse the borough for those things? And then number 9, transfer $60,000 to the borough attorney fees budget to cover extra expenses incurred by the Kerr and Koenig's lawsuits. Lawsuits are expensive, regardless of the cause or nature. So I think that is a substantial amount. If it has not happened, if the services have not happened, I would think that we would be under an obligation to pay our debt, whatever it is. But as far as encumbered yet to be paid, or we're prepaying for hours yet to be incurred, I am not in favor of that. So those are my problems with this proposal.
And with this ordinance, there's like 10 items. The person could make an amendment to remove one and, you know,
I would be in favor of that.
second it, and that's up to the individual assembly members, but we'll go on with member Stan Gregor, and then we'll go down the.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'll be voting yes on this today. I'm not gonna go down by line item by item, but I've been spoken with borough clerk and some department heads. These are necessary things. Property, to touch on one, the first one, the $9,000 from the property development fund. I think it's a great use of funds. Yeah, parking design and traffic flow, for those of you who have had elementary school kids, it is terrifying at times crossing the street and the flow is terrible. I think that's a great investment. In short, all of these are good investment, necessary investments. One thing I will say, and it's more of just me thinking out loud, we're talking about, transferring $60,000 to the borough attorney fees to cover extra expenses by these lawsuits. If we're gonna get far in the weeds on that, I would to me, it seems like that should be an executive session thing at some point if we're gonna get really in the weeds on it. Speaking of it loosely as an item, I don't think that compromises us at all, but it seems to check all the boxes of what that would be, so I guess I would give caution to any of us who speaking too much about ongoing litigation. Anyway, it's first reading, so I'll be voting yes. Thanks.
Member Lynn?
Yeah, I'd like to address that second item on there and the reason for the $9,000. That doesn't really have anything to do with the Children's Center per se, but also has grade school. If you've been over there at times, we've had a number of incidents where children have about been hit now here lately because of the traffic flow over there. And it's getting more serious. And I think that the chief had some ideas, and if I could, if the chief could address a couple of those, because I know we've had some incidents. And I know he has some ideas, if we could, please.
Chief, do you have any input on that specific item about the traffic flow by the elementary school?
Yeah, so the traffic flow incident, it came up because we were talking about some school safety issues with the crosswalks, if you guys have been over there lately, you noticed last year we installed the yellow barricades now with the stop sign forcing traffic to go up Fifth Street. That whole thing is, we're trying to figure out a way to make it safer for the children. Children deserve a safe route to school. We have to do that. We owe that to the children. And if you've dropped off a kid or been over there at drop off time or pickup, it's an absolute nightmare. So we're trying to avert an accident to any of the children. We're also looking, that whole thing encompasses, this topic came up after it was brought up about punching the road all the way through to 8th Street. I was totally against that, and that happened at the same time we were addressing these safety concerns. So talking with the school, talking with the Children's Center, just all of us together, we're trying to figure out a way to make it safer, and making a big public parking area up in that area is the way I think it's gonna be able to address it. Then we can regulate traffic flow. We can make it go in one way, out another. The crossing, we can remove the yellow barricades that are there. It'll add additional parking for everyone, hence a public parking area. We're looking at having a directional flow, like one way for it, with a certain area for parents to pull up, drop off, and then additional parking. So I think we need that. I mean, $9,000 for a design is a very small fee when we're talking about the safety of the children and parents and everyone else that go up there. And if you haven't been up there during those times, I encourage you just go up there and just watch and see the issues that come out of there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Member, did you have a follow-up?
Yeah,
Member
I
Lynn?
do, I do. And I also, please go up and take a look, because I've been there a number of times, and it is absolute chaos up there. And I think the idea that I like behind this is the fact that both the schools behind us also don't have the money to do it, but so the school and the Children's Center, the chief, and the fact that you can put the folks together who are really knowledgeable of this to come up with a plan, I think is important. Thank you.
Member Fine Walsh, did you have your hand up?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a quick question for the manager. I was under the impression that attorney's fees for these lawsuits were covered by insurance. Is that not the case?
Big portion of them are. So 25% of the Koenig's case is covered by insurance, and all of the fees up to a certain level are covered by, for the Kerr lawsuit, are covered by insurance. And just so I know the Assembly received an update on the legal situation from both the attorneys. So I would go through that.
A follow-up question.
Yeah.
Is there a deadline on these monies?
No, sir, there's not.
Okay, so I would propose an amendment that we strike this line entirely from this ordinance. I would like to hear from council prior to moving this money. And I believe, you disagree with me, if I agree, it's likely already owed. I would imagine it's already owed, and it may be necessary to pay for it. But it sounds like we would still have time to do that while also getting some information from our council, because I have a hard time looking at this and it appears that either we have just kind of a blank check out for our lawyers, or they miscalculated by $30,000 how much these would cost. Yeah, typically, when you represent someone, even if they don't pay the full retainer at the time, you give them some idea of how much litigation is going to cost. Usually that's the entirety of the retainer. And maybe you go over a little bit, maybe you don't. $30,000 over the retainer, I feel like, if that were gonna be the case, we should have known a while back. And I am worried, in light of that recent communication, that it appears that we're litigating this purely for for just kind of prove a legal point here. I'm struggling every day, struggling more to see how this benefits our borough. So, I would like some indication from the borough's council that they are really, really focused on wrapping this up as quickly and as cheaply as possible. Because I agree with Member Marsh here. I don't see how, and also the public testimony today, how is anyone benefiting other than the attorneys here? This is our public money, and it is fleeing the island to Anchorage, to pay for these attorneys' fees, and that's very frustrating. So, maybe disagree with me if you want, but I have a lot of heartburn about this line item, and I think we are owed some explanation from the legal team before we, maybe we do owe this money, but I don't want to give anyone the impression that we're willing to just ride this all the way to trial for just, anyway, that's my amendment. I propose we strike it.
So the amendment in the short version is to remove item 9 from the supplemental budget.
Correct.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Member Schwartz. Discussion on the amendment to remove item 9, that's transfer of $60,000 to the borough's attorney fees budget. Member Stan Gregor.
Yeah. You look like you were ready to talk there, Mr. Giesbeck. I'd like to hear what you had to say regarding this amendment.
Through
If
the
you
mayor.
would, please.
Yeah, so, the assembly at any point can ask for an update from the attorneys. You hadn't done that for a while, so I asked for a written update, which you've all received. It goes over all of these questions and explains it all. You heard some public testimony earlier that was highly inaccurate, and, I'm not gonna get into that. But, using the Deemer report as the example, that's been released to Mr. Koenig's attorney for well over a month now. So if his attorney hasn't given it to him, that's not my issue. I can't control that. I highly recommend the assembly take the recommendation of the council, of the councils in this case. So primarily, Mr. Gaddy is the attorney assigned by your insurance company to represent the borough. So you can strike this, but then I would say have a very, I would expect that the assembly needs to have another conversation if the written update is not sufficient for you. I don't understand why many of you have already had those conversations or been told you're welcome to call Mr. Gaddy. He is your attorney representing this. So anyway, that's my concern. It's Debbie put this in here because we're going over budget on our attorney fees, and it happens to be the amount that is being tied to these lawsuits. So anyway, I don't want to sit here and try to give updates on lawsuits that needs to be done in private and with the attorney, with the assembly, so.
The reason I was asking you, Steve, was because I won't be voting to strike it, but what I'm hoping we can do at the second meeting was have perhaps an executive session, either during the session or have council brief the assembly maybe during a meeting. So it feels like there's some, feels like it'd be important. So anyway, I won't be voting to strike that now. Maybe after meeting with council, I might change that, but I think that would be a view. So I will not be voting for this amendment.
So with what Member Stanton Gregor just said about talking to council in executive session, maybe we could do that before the meeting? Or so we have the update before we have the second reading and the public hearing?
I think that would be wonderful.
I mean, that's something we could work on, Clerk Vergula?
Mr. Mayor, it's your call. They're your attorneys and yes, I mean, we can clearly make that.
Next
an
meeting
important-
is a 6 o'clock meeting, so we'd have time earlier in the evening to get an update. I mean,
What
we got
time
the-
works for the assembly?
Does 5 o'clock work?
Is that sufficient time?
Huh?
Is that sufficient time?
I don't know if an hour is sufficient time considering the way certain people talk. I mean,
Sorry.
if it could be summarized in layman's terms, it would probably be plenty of time.
Keep it on point.
So anyway, maybe we could schedule that before our next meeting. Now we're back to the amendment. Member Fine Walsh?
Yeah, I'll just
I mean-
interject here. I appreciate the, you know, and in light of the fact that we're gonna do three readings of, or wait a second, is this correct? Is this three, we have three readings?
It's an ordinance.
And it sounds like we will be able to, we'll be able to organize a meeting with council prior to the final reading. So that's kind of, mostly I just wanna, I just have some trouble with this item and kind of the direction that expenditure seems to be going. And I would just like to check in, you know, as in addition to, you know, if we're gonna pay this. So yeah, I'll leave the motion out, but I fully support setting a meeting and it sounds like we'll be able to do that.
So then, you'd have to, redact your.
No, I'll redact the motion. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's,
With
I
the
don't, we don't need to
approval
vote.
of the second, the person that made the second. I believe that's proper.
That was me.
Yeah,
I did have some more discussion on this.
well,
I
we
think
could,
that we get, and I agree with Jay too. Some things that are done executive session. You get varying amounts of input from the public depending on what the topic is. And with this one, I've been getting an awful lot of input and they share the same frustrations that Mr. Feinwald shares that I share with him. It's how long is it gonna go on and how much? So I will respectfully take back my second, I guess.
okay, well, then we've got time to, you know, look into it on our own with our attorneys, go over the email we got from them and public hearings at the next meeting on the 18th. So, I have some problems, or just questions more than anything with some of these, items 1 through 10. And, the one of them is, paying for somebody to go get trained. So we have our certification for our building inspectors. We've got one person that's an employee, a former employee. And I can understand why we need these documents, but it's kind of, I know it's hard to get good help. I mean, fully educated help for positions in the community or anywhere in the workforce. But it seems like, you know, $11,000 here, $12,000 there, it adds up. But I can't make an amendment. I'm not gonna propose any amendments. So, and one question I did have before, and I will vote for this today in its first reading, is the item for the 3, increase the fire department's machine and equipment budget by 11,500 to purchase mounting cradles. That's all fine. But I'm wondering why the price for 2 Starlink mobile units is $7,000. I bought 2 myself this year, one for home, one for the boat, and they were $700 a piece. So I don't know if that covers usage fee for a year or not.
So.
Remember Hankins, or Mr. Hankins.
Sorry, it was easier to come up here.
Yeah.
So what I was looking at is communications unit for the borough for operations, landslides, helicopters. You saw Wrangell was using them during their event. These devices actually have, the antenna uses the Starlink Roam antenna. It's cannibalized by this company. It's put into its own package with a battery that powers this thing for 8 hours. The problem is that Starlink has discontinued the antenna that is used. It uses something called power over Ethernet, which allows it to be charged off of a lower voltage power source, whereas all the other antennas require 110. So you have to lug a additional power source around to use these devices. Originally, I was gonna budget for these in my next year's budget, but because Starlink has discontinued this antenna, that I wanted to get for it, because essentially it's a box about yay big, about that thick, about that wide. You turn a battery switch, it's on. You don't have to set up a tripod. There's no cables to use. You don't have to mess around with additional cabling or anything like that. So that in an emergency, I can give this to anyone and say, go turn it on. More, it's user friendly. I got 2 of them, so if for some reason comms are down in town and we have an incident in an area that traditionally does not have communications, we can send one to the scene, still have comms here, and still be able to contact the outside world if for some reason all borough-wide communication is shut down.
Yeah, well, thanks for the explanation. It's a lot different configuration than either of the ones I have, it sounds like. And I agree with you on the benefit of having this remote communications available. We talked to DOT, we were visiting with Goins, Director Goins, about the benefit that a Starlink had from using it on the Wrangell landslide. You know, he's sitting in his office and he's watching real-time stuff. So I agree with, I was just curious. Thank you for your explanation.
If you would like, I can forward you the information from the company's website and you can look at it yourself.
No, I'm good.
Okay. And to answer your earlier question, this just covers the costs of the 2 systems. I will budget for the service in my next year's budget.
Perfect, thank you. So anyway, like I said, I'm gonna vote for this in its first reading. We have 2 more readings and a public hearing to go, but it sounds like assembly members have some concerns and we'll address them as we get to them. Any other discussion on ordinance 2024-03 in its first reading? Clerk, call the roll.
Thomas,
Yes.
Donna,
No.
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Mark.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, I believe the ordinance passed with a 6-1 vote with member Marsh opposed. Next item, ordinance 2024-04, an ordinance amending section 10.20.010, discharge of firearms prohibited of the Petersburg Municipal Code to remove prohibition of discharge of firearms in the Frederick Point East area. Entertain a motion to adopt this ordinance in its first reading.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made by member Stanton Gregor, seconded by member Lynn. Discussion. Just for the public, if you've been deer hunting in the fall and you drive out past Sandy Beach and on that road, you can shoot here, you can't shoot there, and it's very confusing and I don't know who put this amendment forward, but I appreciate it. So I will be voting in favor of this. If there's no other discussion, clerk call the roll.
Rob,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Donna.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, that ordinance passes unanimously in its first reading. Item C, limited notice to proceed. Notice to proceed to Dawson Construction for the work project. PMC CEO Hofstadter requests authorization to issue the notice to proceed to Dawson Construction for the amount not to exceed $3.3 million to provide foundation work and to install underground mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, and to procure structural steel and long lead mechanical and electrical equipment for the Wellness Education and Resource Center work. This amount of money is secured through the $20 million Department of Treasury grant, which was awarded to PMC in December of 2023. I entertain a motion to approve this notice to proceed.
So moved. Second.
Motion's been made by member Lynn, I believe, seconded by member Stan Gregor. Discussion. Seeing none, clerk call a roll.
Jay,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Donna,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Scott.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, notice to proceed has been awarded. Item D, support for reappointment of John Jensen to the North Pacific Fisheries Management Council. Just to make it clear, if everybody doesn't know, John is my brother. I request assembly approval to send the letter attached of support for reappointment of John Jensen to the North Pacific Fisheries Management Council to Governor Dunleavy and the Office of Boards and Commissions. I've already sent a letter just for me because of the time sensitive type part of this. The 13th, the governor's appointments to the two positions in Alaska need to be back to some agency in Washington DC. Can't remember where it's going, but anyway, I'd entertain a motion to approve sending this letter to the governor.
Moved.
Second.
Motion been made with a second. Any discussion? Clerk call the roll.
Mark,
Yes.
Donna,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Scott.
Yeah.
Jay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm sure John will appreciate your support for sending that letter. Item E, support for Southeast Alaska Solid Waste Authority, CSWA, grant application for the Regional Solid Waste Management Planning Grant offered by the Denali Commission. Public Works Director and CSWA Chair, Kata, request approval of a letter of support for CSWA's application, for a grant offered by the Denali Commission for Regional Solid Waste Management Planning. Entertain a motion to approve that.
We'll move.
Second?
Motion been made by member Lynn, seconded by member Marsh. Any discussion? With conversation with, Mr. Kata in Juneau, I believe, some of the bigger communities are getting more interested in this because they're having problems with disposing of their solid waste. So maybe we get the backing of, Juneau, Sitka, Ketchikan, bigger communities will get some support. So anyway, if there's any other input, if none, will clerk call a roll on support for this letter?
Donna,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Bob.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we will send a letter. Item F, approval to hire a grant writer for the Banana Point Breakwater. Manager Giesbrecht requests approval to use approximately $5,000 to hire a grant writer to complete a Denali Commission grant for the Banana Point Breakwater. There is $4,397 in Special Revenue Fund 200 specifically budgeted for the Banana Point Breakwater. I'd entertain a motion to approve this request.
So move.
Second.
Motion with a second, discussion. Clerk call the roll.
Thomas,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Donna. Mark.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, communications, correspondence received since February 1st. There is correspondence listed here. We don't read them at the assembly meetings. They're on the agenda if people are interested to see what communications we've received. That brings us to item 17, assembly discussion items. Assembly member comments. Any assembly members have comments today? Member Schwartz.
Been getting a lot of input, and I know that you've been through this, down this road before with noon meetings, 6 o'clock. People said, hey, I can't get there for my public testimony. They get, and then they're working or whatever. That's from the public view. My own personal view is I'm in the middle of tearing engines apart and I get right into my project and, gotta run off to the meeting. Just for convenience of it and for the public as well, I'd like us to at least have a discussion about that this spring sometime, 6 PM meetings.
Okay, so what, all you need to do if you want to have that on the agenda is talk to the clerk.
Okay.
Any other assembly members have, any discussion items, comments today? Member Fine Walsh.
Just kind of a procedural item. I guess I should have maybe brought this up a while back, but the Fierce Allegiance application for the assignment of that lease, was that not supposed to be addressed during this March 4th meeting? Or are we kind of, I believe at the time we postponed that for a date certain, that date being March, and
18th, I think.
was it March, was it the 18th of March? Okay, okay. My mistake. I'm sorry. I apologize. I just want to make sure we didn't lose track of that guy.
Any other comments by assembly members? Recognitions? Seeing none. Any staff have recognitions? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. They're officially adjourned. Good luck on your boat ride.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.